Hello, my friends, and more people are rejecting Veilguard right out, and it looks like BioWare has some of the media turning against them. That's not good when you have the media against you. So let's see what Endymion has to say. Let's get to it. Let's do it.
Hey everyone, it's Endymion, and we're now entering the revisionist era of Dragon Age Veilguard's release, now where gaming journalists are suddenly unanimously turning on the game in BioWare in record time. Beyond this, I want to bring light to a certain game's journalist that's also attacking players and then running with their tail between their legs. Firstly, I want to start with IGN. They gave the game a 9 out of 10 if you remember, claiming it to be amazing, inclusive, and all of the other things. The reviewer at IGN who gave Veilguard the 9 was also found out to be a non-binary person. And suspiciously, as I proved in previous Dragon Age videos, many of the highest scores for this game, they all came from people who identify within that specific ideological group. As reviews have started to come out from people who've played the game after release, the impressions are coming in and it's not looking good. Like I said, IGN gave it a glowing review. Now another person at IGN is pushing a different narrative. Here's the article. Dragon Age the Veilguard is at war with itself. The sequel to Inquisition's Dreadwolf story is trapped in an action game with no interest in the past. Well, that's interesting how you guys went from giving it a 9 out of 10 to now the game has an identity crisis and lacks any real tangible connections to previous games. Yeah,
that's a real problem if they're starting to honestly talk about the game. I mean, the game isn't like totally horrible, but it definitely has a lot of issues. And it sounds like the media is finally starting to be like, hey, maybe we need to start telling the truth about the games, because if it sucks, it sucks. And we need to tell, that's our job as journalists, right? I mean, yeah. So anyways, let's get to it.
I know different people wrote the review versus this article. But generally speaking, when it comes to these websites, the opinions expressed are usually considered to be a homogenized take by the website in question. Otherwise, they wouldn't allow the article to be posted. Obviously, common sense, I know, but let's put on our detective glasses and sift through this wreckage. IGN points out right away that nobody in the game ever utters the word Veilguard, and you may find that insane, but no, they're right actually. I'm currently 62 hours into the game in Chapter 11, and yeah, I'm about to hit the point of no return, and there actually hasn't been a single uttering of the word Veilguard even once in the game.
That's weird.
It's so obvious that this thing has had rewrites behind the scenes. After all, the game was originally called Dragon Age Dreadwolf, which was by and large a way more badass name, and if the game was actually about Solus completely and had him as the villain, I kid you not that Dreadwolf could have been one of the greatest RPGs in modern gaming history, and no, I'm not kidding. Had they just committed to the scenario that BioWare had set up, we would have had Dragon Age's Infinity War moment or Endgame even. It really doesn't matter. The point is that they fumbled what was easily one of the best twists in modern gaming with Solus, and instead gave you, well, what they gave you instead. As IGN puts it, a name that Rook, Varric, Harding, and the rest of the gang definitely do know, though, is Dreadwolf, the mythical moniker of former Dragon Age companion Solus, as well as the original subtitle for this fourth entry in BioWare's fantasy series. While ultimately it really doesn't matter what this game is called, the more I play the Veilguard, the more it feels like it's awkwardly in conflict with itself, torn into pieces that reflect two very different intentions. One, a sequel to a decade-old RPG, the other, a fresh beginning with no ties to what came before. Many aspects of the Veilguard point to it being something of a soft reset or even spin-off from the main Dragon Age series. Set in the northern Tevinter region, it leaves behind the saga's original southern home of Ferelden, along with all of its characters and politics. Dragon Age has always started afresh with each new game, as unlike Mass Effect, there's no persistent protagonist across the series as each installment tells a brand new story. The shift to Tevinter is perfectly in keeping with Dragon Age's history then, but the Veilguard isn't a typical Dragon Age game. It is its first direct sequel, a continuation of Dragon Age Inquisition, which dedicated its post-credits and Trespasser DLC to setting up Solus as the villainous Dreadwolf, and this is where it all starts to feel a little messy. And I actually find myself agreeing with IGN for once in a long time, credit where it's due, but yes, it's obvious that BioWare was afraid that people who were new to the series wouldn't be as attached to the soulless Inquisition storyline, so they sidelined it on purpose.
Yeah, but if that's the case, all you'd have to do is just watch some videos or go play Inquisition or go watch some playthrough videos to catch up. I mean, there's various ways that you could catch up on the storyline from Inquisition if you wanted to play this as a true sequel of Dreadwolf, right? So that BioWare just bent the knee to the woke mob, and this is the result.
Which is such a moronic move, since games like Witcher 3 made their entire plot be about Geralt's connection to Ciri, and finding her before the Wild Hunt does. You could argue that Witcher's 3 story is like Inquisition's. A culmination of years of storylines and character threads crescendoing into a massive story that spans literal continents. But had CDPR done what BioWare did here, they would have made Ciri not as integral to the story at all, out of fear that maybe playing Witcher 3 would be someone's first Witcher game. So how...
Which actually, for me, it was my first Witcher game. And I didn't really know any of the backstory of anything, but I still enjoyed Witcher 3. It was a great game. It was one of the best games ever. But it didn't deter me because I didn't know the backstory of everything. And as things laid out, I mean, the writers make sure that you almost don't have to watch or know if have played the other two games to know what's going on, right? It just unravels, not unravels, but it unfolds is a better word, the storyline, and everything just works, right? Because they paid attention and they were dedicated to the craft to tell the story properly. So, yeah, that's such a lame excuse. Bad on BioWare.
How could they be attached to Ciri if they didn't know her importance from previous stories? Thankfully, though, CDPR didn't do this and instead took the time to use flashbacks to establish who Ciri was.
Exactly.
Why she was important, and why you as a player, even if this was your first Witcher game, should care about why Geralt needs to find Ciri.
Exactly.
This is what Veilguard needed to do as well, shying away from important lore bits out of fear of a newcomer not understanding is utterly pointless.
That's so weak on BioWare. If that's one of the real reasons why they changed, that's pathetic. Absolutely pathetic.
They bought the game, didn't they? Why wouldn't they want to explore this world for all that it has to offer them? Cutting back on these concepts due to fear of alienating players has done nothing but alienate the core fan base that has been there since day one supporting you.
Exactly. It's pandering to the 1%, right? When 99% of the core players of this game, this is not what they wanted.
It's ridiculous, of course. IGN even agrees. Here's more of what they had to say. So much of the Veilguard is dedicated to Solus, its opening season performing a dangerous god-unleashing ritual, and the world is littered with quests that explore his history and relationship with those dark deities. There may be no mention of the word Veilguard anywhere, but everyone is talking about the Dreadwolf. Why isn't that the name of the game again? Even John Epler, the creative director of Veilguard, defended this design decision when he told IGN this earlier this year. Among many reasons why we moved to Northern Thedas is it becomes a little bit more of a clean slate for us. There's not as many decisions you have made up to this point that have an impact on what's happening in Northern Thedas. And we don't have to speak directly to things like who is the Divide, because again, that's happening in the South. And this is, yet again, another reason why I think Veilguard doesn't work as a true Dragon Age game. These games are made and designed to be player choice driven. Your choices should obviously matter. Clearly, they were able to add at least 3 Inquisition choices at the beginning of Veilguard for players to choose. When Inquisition came out, BioWare even had a full comprehensive website that you could use to choose all of your choices from previous games.
Oh, wow.
So this way, at the very least, you could download your world state, if you will, into Inquisition before you started playing. So when you did play the game proper, all the major choices that mattered to the future of Thedas respected your choices in your playthrough.
I believe you could do that with Mass Effect. I think when you play Mass Effect 2, you can, you'd have to have played on the same, I don't know. I don't remember if you saved it or whatever, but you could load in all your past choices, I believe, when you started Mass Effect 2, when you're on the table, you know, and you're getting rebuilt or whatever. So yeah, I didn't know that for Dragon Age though. That's actually pretty cool.
The fact they didn't do that here again is ridiculous. You literally just needed to copy and paste what you did for Inquisition. You could even use the same website even, and then add these other core Inquisition choices to it as well. I don't like the fact that Veilguard feels like a reboot because Dragon Age really didn't need that. The fact they felt like Veilguard needed to reboot the world in a sense, yet also have the opening be about Solus, and then have the entirety of the Crossroads be a literal lore dump semi-open level world where you can then engage with Solus's memories, shows that this is in fact not a reboot. It still has direct ties to the previous world.
Yeah.
But doing a half-assed attempt to cater to old school fans while doing what they did here, the whole thing just feels divorced. I commend IGN for making that article. It's very rare to see video game websites speaking up for players like this. Unfortunately, most of the time it's peak delusion. Journalists have completely divorced themselves from the cultural zeitgeist, and they are calling people ableists and racists.
Right.
With no evidence besides their own echo chambers that are always smelling their own farts. We'll talk more about IGN in a bit, but let's divert this conversation now to one of the biggest offenders during this Veilguard discourse, which is the journalist Jason Schreier. This dude hates me. He blocked me on Twitter, which is fine. That's his right. And I should remind people that he withheld abuse allegations at Activision Blizzard only so that he could sell that information in one of his books for money. This guy, in my opinion, is not a good person. When you look at him, all I can say is, Jason, he looks like he's vaccinated, but not in a good way. I don't know how else to explain it. Look, I'm not bullying the guy, but he's made it apparent that he enjoys attacking people like me and others openly, so I just wanted to bring attention to something here. When Veilguard first came out, it allegedly broke records on Steam for highest BioWare player counts. Of course, I debunked this because Veilguard was the first game BioWare released day one on Steam, so of course it would have the highest, since every other BioWare game has either never come to Steam or came years after their release, so it's not a fair comparison.
Right.
Regardless, Jason ignored this because Games Journo's got a Games Journo.
Right. It's all about the context of what they're talking about. So, yeah, Davion's totally right.
And he even said this and posted, "Go woke, go broke, top of the charts." Very nice. And then one user would then reply, "There's no way you genuinely like this turd." And Jason would reply in turn, "I actually don't like the game very much, but I do like seeing you chuds get dunked on." Wow, what a vote of confidence, Jason. Shilling for a game that you openly admit is not something you even enjoy. Wow. Imagine being so lost in the sauce you admit that the very thing you're defending is not worth defending, but you do it anyway because you know that if you don't, you'll lose access to codes and get blacklisted. Incredible display of journalism for everyone to see here. Another user would then reply, "In other words, you actually don't care about the game, you just want to feel your wokeism validated." Jason would then say, "No, I am simply sharing another data point to support what I've been trying to explain for years now, which is that despite what idiots may tell you, DEI is not a factor in whether games do or do not sell." Yeah, Jason has lost his composure, dear viewer. DEI...
Yeah, he is delusional if he actually thinks that, because it makes a huge difference.
Or diversity, equity, and inclusion absolutely has everything to do with why games are not selling. People have pattern recognition for a reason. You're telling me that every single game that has failed this year, from the West especially, they all coincidentally push ideological nonsense and either destroy or remove white characters from their own legacy properties, and this has nothing to do with their commercial performance.
Yeah, I read or something about the Japanese market, I guess the Eastern market, I don't know, but I guess they have like gone out of their way to like pretty much take everything DEI and woke out of their games. So they're kind of ahead of the trend. Hopefully it's not a trend, but it'll be the norm, but they're ahead of the game in that. So kudos for that. I hope the Western gaming world catches up. And it looks like we're starting to. Like, this is the very beginning of doing that. And I hope it just expunges everything out of all of these games and it never comes back.
Yet every game that has done well this year, like Space Marine 2 or Black Myth Wukong, have sold in the multiple millions. Don't talk down to their audiences and give them experiences actually worth the money that are spent on those products. But no, of course, the
Yeah, escapism and choice. It's all we want.
DEI is not the problem. That's because Jason is actually a champion of DEI. How can diversity, equity, and inclusion be the reason why so much is failing? It's not about race, right? Well, actually, Jason is lying and he has reason to do so, so let's dive into that now. You see, Jason, like I said, is a cheerleader of DEI, and he also works at Bloomberg. And as you can see here on screen, Bloomberg is a really big defender of DEI.
Yep.
In fact, you could say one
There
of the
it
biggest
is.
defenders even. Bloomberg shepherds the concept of DEI and champions it in all of its forms, openly admitting that they hire based on race and gender because it, according to Bloomberg,
And that's actually totally racist. Like, that's the thing that they say that they're not. It just kills me. It just kills me.
strengthens their teams and even talks about stuff like black wealth transfer and racial wealth gaps. Wow, calling black people poor in your DEI webpage? All right,
Yeah.
Bloomberg. Of course, they also champion and push for ethnic inclusivity and even go as far as to separate it into categories
Oh, wow.
like LGBTQ+.
Disability?
So Bloomberg instead hires people based on what they like in the bedroom. What does this have to do with their talent?
Don't ask questions. Just consume product.
They even hire disabled people because they're disabled. Wow, not at all because this helps their ESG, right? Couldn't be. I mean, it's no coincidence that they champion and push for social causes on purpose and even show that they have 12,000 employees that specifically come from groups like Black people, LGBT, and even Latinx. Yeah, they unironically use the word Latinx in their own DEI page. Very, very interesting.
Latinx? I've never heard it pronounced Latinx. I've only heard it pronounced Latinx, but yeah, I can see Latinx. That sounds even worse, actually. So we'll go with that.
So again, of course, Jason Schreier doesn't believe that DEI is the reason why things are failing, because if he were to admit that, Bloomberg would flay him alive and then throw him into the gulag. So Jason is going to do everything he can.
So I guess if I wanted to work at Bloomberg, I'd have to identify as what, maybe a black lesbian and roll in there with a wheelchair. And then they would definitely hire me. Oh, I guess I'd have to be non-binary too. I don't know. One of those groups, right?
Like a good journalist, except actually tackle the issues head on. DEI is ruining a lot of things. I don't care who you hire as long as they're the best people for the job.
Exactly. That's what I've been saying in all these videos. It doesn't matter who you are, a man or a woman or whatever ethnic group, disabled, it does not matter as long as you have the skills to do the job that you've been hired to do. That's it. That is the bare minimum, and is not even the bare minimum. I mean, that is what you need. If you could do the job, you're going to get hired, not because of anything else.
Twitter, or X, used to have hundreds of employees, most just women, who would lounge around drinking lattes while posting TikToks, showing a day in the life of a Twitter employee. I'm sure you've seen them, showing how they would get zero work done and just relax all day. Then Elon Musk.
And they were probably getting paid pretty well too. Yeah, and he had just said Elon Musk, and when Musk bought X, now used to be Twitter, I think it was like 50%. It might have been higher, that he just right off the bat, like, you are worthless and you're gone. No question. See ya.
Musk buys Twitter, fires all these people who did nothing, and you tell me if X's performance has changed at all. Oh, what, it got better?
Yeah.
Well, that's interesting, isn't it? It's almost as if hiring based on merit and talent matters more or something. I know, it's a crazy concept. Don't tell Jason Schreier that, though, because he'll ignore it, like he always does. So excuse me that the guy who champions and shills for Dragon Age the DEI guard isn't going to admit that the reason why the game sucks is because it keeps pushing current day-isms and feels divorced from the reality of what BioWare fans want from their games. And again, Jason admitting that he doesn't even like the game very much either, so he agrees with us that the game is not good. But he can't fully support it because then BioWare will send their people to tear Jason apart for standing against the cult. Look, Jason can lie all that he wants. He's a journalist, so it's kind of expected at this point. But you need to at least be transparent and consistent. Look, I lean more conservatively. I don't hide that clearly. I'm glad that Trump won, and I don't
Yeah.
agree with pretty much anything that the left pushes in terms of politics. And I'm not going to sit here and lie to you and say that I champion the things that the left do, because clearly I don't. And that's why consistency is key, and your reputation is really all you have. And when you're a games journalist who frequently archives and makes articles showing how all of these game studios are failing, their games are imploding, like Suicide Squad and more, yet you always take the point to say that it's not because of DEI, guys. It's not because they shot Batman and blew his brains out in an alley like his parents. No, dear viewers, because the game was too expensive and took too long to make. Okay, sure, whatever you say, Jason. Whatever you need to do so that the checks keep coming in and the free games you never buy yourself but openly complain that the industry is dying over while you never once put your money where your mouth is because you literally get everything for free. So why would you, right? It's just like when other people beg for codes like Khalif Adams did for Veilguard. These people are clowns. They never support the things they apparently champion for. They will tell you, oh, this game failed because the chuds didn't buy it. Oh, my bad. I didn't know that Concord was made for me, because you guys kept telling us that stuff like that in Dustborn and all this other nonsense was being made for the modern audience or something. And last time I checked, I'm not the modern audience and I'm not the targeted demographic anymore for these games, right? You guys said that. I'm that same audience instead that's just been here for years or even decades. This stuff doesn't speak to me or it's for me, so why should I support it again?
Yeah, and it's the majority of people. That's their demographic. It's the majority of people that don't like this stuff, yet they're pandering to the 1%. It always goes back to that, and it's a guaranteed loss of revenue for the studio.
And look at what happened during the election. All day, you can doom scroll on Twitter or TikTok, and you'll find plenty of videos of unhinged individuals shaving their heads in retaliation against Trump winning. Like, good for you. Now you're even uglier than before and Trump is still president. How does shaving your head solve anything? To be real with you, all it does is it makes it easier to identify you in a crowd so people know that you're an insane person who should probably be inside of Arkham Asylum.
Ben is a Republican this term. Not nice? Well, guess what? He about to come home. It raining out. I locked him out. I packed my suitcase. I'm going to divorce his ass. I'm done. I am done. It is now over. 4B Queens! Woohoo!
And I literally fell to the ground crying because we actually are in a dangerous situation.
So dangerous. It's just... We have no rights. Come on, lady. You have tons of rights.
Aside from the news this morning about who won the election, I literally looked up what the 4B movement was. If you don't know what the 4B movement is, Korean women had decided to stop having babies until they received equal rights.
That is really good news that you're not going to be reproducing. So, thank you. We don't want you reproducing.
And their country was screwed because they weren't having enough kids. Their population was going down too quickly. I cannot believe.
Yeah, so is Japanese culture. They're not having babies either. And America is down as well before this supposed sex strike is going to occur. Which, quite frankly, I don't think most of these ladies would be able to have sex anyway, so it doesn't really matter. They're just posturing.
I'm in a different world today.
Because I do. All right. I don't know how to use this thing. Let's see what happens. Is this cutting off hair? I'm going to have to cut it short on that.
How does cutting your hair... How is that a protest? That doesn't make any sense. It just makes you look... I mean, there are a lot of people with shaved heads, which is fine, but, like, come on, really?
I'm just not sure what else to do at this point. I'm just not sure what to do. So the best thing that I can think of is I'm going to have to shave my head and stop wearing makeup.
So the 4B movement is just, I'm going to uglify myself and not have sex. I'm going to shave my head, not wear makeup, and not have sex. All right, check. You won't be, because no one's going to want to. With you. Oh, boy.
and divorce my husband. And
Why? Why are all these women divorcing their husbands if they voted for Trump? It's so out of touch with reality and so petty and so hate-filled. It's like these people's hearts have just like broken open and just delusional hatred is pouring out. I don't get it. And it seems to mostly be coming from women. So what does that say?
And that's what I'm gonna have to do. I don't know what else to do. So come shave my head with me. Are you kidding me? Absolutely not.
Oh, good.
I am absolutely not going to shave my head
Good.
because President Trump is the president-elect. Are you?
Good.
What?
And not working and being
All right. She had me. So I'm glad she turned out to be a sane woman. Good for her.
allowed to walk the streets due to how Looney Tunes the inside of your skull is on a daily basis. The entirety of
Yes.
America spoke and said no to woke, and then even then you're seeing people complaining saying, how did the liberals lose the election? I mean, we've only had celebrities twerking on stage and telling young men constantly that they're racist unless they vote for our side. Gee,
Right.
I wonder why you lost then, huh? You
Yeah.
know what? Let's get a little philosophical here for a second. Let's be honest, man. Young men are easily one of the most despised groups of demographics in
Oh,
the
yeah.
modern world right now.
Yeah, I mean, I would just be hating it if I was like 20 something right now. I mean, it's bad enough as it is just being labeled as a cis white man. So, like, I'm just finishing up a round of schooling to progress in my my career, but that means I have to go now look for a new job, and I'm actually kind of dreading it because I'm not sure if I'm going to be affected by all this craziness because I'm a white man and therefore I'm evil incarnate. So I don't know. Hopefully my skills and what I bring to the table will be enough. So we'll see.
And can you blame them for not wanting another 4 years of nonsense or having their games and movies be ruined like they have been for years?
Yeah.
Because the sad reality is for many young men today, they have nothing. They have basically no future prospects.
Yeah.
They're constantly looked over, especially if they're white, to attend schools or landing a job. So then
Yep.
millions of these guys, they recede into stuff like video games, hoping for the escapism from their bleak reality. And then you weirdos
Wow.
couldn't even let them have that, could you? Everything is white men bad, women better. White
Yep.
man is always the bad guy, like in Veilguard's case, which I've proved in previous videos.
Yep.
Like almost every bad guy is a white dude or woman.
Yep.
It's ridiculous. And then you beat young men over the head, calling them worthless, and the world will be better off without them. Then comes a time where they can make a difference for once, where they have actual power and agency. So, they vote for the people who don't hate them or want to see them suffer on a daily basis. And then when that side wins, these people have the audacity to say men are racist for not voting liberal. Like, are you being serious right now? Your side hates the men you make it abundantly clear all of the time. Now you have these liberal women that are saying they won't sleep with guys. It's this whole movement thing. Like, good, go ahead. You weren't sleeping with those guys anyway because you're brain
Exactly.
rotted by the policies that you digest anyways. Now the entire culture is changing. Guys are moving on and leaving these liberal weirdos behind, and their products, movies, and
Yep.
shows are failing. Like I said before, now that Trump won, you're going to see the Hollywoods and the game industries, they're all going to be doubling down on making more anti-conservative content. I fully expect more white men villains, more people of color heroes, and it's not going to work. People are so over this forced wokeness that at this point, it's more sad than anything else. Like I said in my previous video, Veilguard came out at the absolute worst time that it could have. They released a leftist, politically charged story
Yep.
that makes all the companions pansexual and sidelines even the white elf guy and gives players the opposite of what they want. And when BioWare is in shambles and Veilguard is ruined by lack of sales, who will they blame? The weirdos that the game was made for, who never show up ever because
Nope.
they don't support anything? Or will it be the convenient group they always blame for everything,
Yep.
who they call chuds, because it makes them feel better about themselves?
It's conservative white Christians.
This environment, this industry, these politics and their outcomes are all the fault of out-of-touch weirdos who never once in their lives could come to the conclusion that their ideology may be far too alienating to the common human being. You know things are bad when even the gamer.com is admitting that stuff like Veilguard isn't very good and that the writing is inconsistent. The Gamer said in their article, all this makes for is a game that I enjoy playing, but when I get to the Dragon Age bits, the characters, the story, the dialogue, the choices, and none of this is up to par with the Veilguard's predecessors.
Yep.
You know how bad to the conclusion that their ideology may be far too alienating to the common human being. You know things are bad when even the gamer.com is admitting that stuff like Veilguard isn't very good and that the writing is inconsistent. The Gamer said in their article, all this makes for is a game that I enjoy playing, but when I get to the Dragon Age bits, the characters, the story, the dialogue, the choices, and none of this is up to par with the Veilguard's predecessors.
Exactly.
You know how bad things gotta be ad revenue-wise for these websites, that they gotta start agreeing with the people that they hate? These same people were slobbering all over Veilguard just a week ago, saying that this was a second coming of Christ, that this was the best thing ever made. Remember when Eurogamer had the same guy who gave the game a perfect score say that Veilguard is Dragon Age's Mass Effect 2 moment?
Oh, jeez.
And then it ended up not being that at all, and instead Veilguard ended up being Dragon Age's Andromeda moment instead? Yeah, we all remember. Don't you ever compare the peak that is Mass Effect 2 to this game ever again.
Yeah, Mass Effect 2 is so good. So good.
Mass Effect 2 is one of the best games ever made in my opinion, and was an amazing sequel with one of the best casts in gaming. You can't even speak to your teammates in Veilguard unless the game has a mission or scene ready for you. How far away are we from what we want here that we can't even speak to a companion in a BioWare game when we want to? In Mass Effect 2, you can speak to people whenever you want, getting to know them in between missions, like how you can speak to Garrus or Miranda, and just learn about them over time. The only companions in that game that you couldn't speak to technically were the DLC ones like Kasumi, but they were DLC even though, yes, I did find that disappointing that you couldn't speak to them. Veilguard, however, doesn't allow you to take agency in this regard at all. Instead, you can only speak to team members when they want to speak to you. And well, that's not very fun, is it? But that's how it is here. Hence why I keep saying that Veilguard is less a role-playing game and more just an action game where sometimes you're allowed to actually role-play, but not really, because most choices don't matter anyway. And remember that when games do well, publishers let people know. Even Anthem, for all of its faults, it sold 2 million copies in a week. Yet where have we heard from BioWare on sales numbers? Of course not, because it didn't reach even half of that. It's more like 25% at best. And IGN can't defend this game. They ended their article that I was speaking about in the beginning with, the overall result is that Dragon Age the Veilguard isn't the golden era BioWare game that I had hoped it would be. Torn between continuing its traditional role-playing legacy and starting afresh as a modern action RPG, the end result is an awkward sequel trapped in a cage made of reboot ideas. After years and years of faltered steps, I understand why BioWare landed on this particular, very mainstream AAA formula. But I wish it had been inspired by the undying mass popularity of The Witcher 3, a full-on nerdy RPG, rather than veer closer to Sony's palpable RPG-ish approach for modern God of War. But that ill-defined shape is often what uneasy development cycles get you. Thankfully, the Veilguard's launch has seemingly gone well for EA and BioWare, which hopefully means Dragon Age will continue. Let's just hope next time it's not just the name that's got a bit of Baldur's Gate in it, and that's where we're at right now with all of this.
That's brutal.
The game is not doing well. People like Jason Schreier are just, they're lying to you. And doubling down, because if he doesn't, his cult will literally end him. And all of this stuff is failing due to a blowback that's been growing for years as one side of the aisle refuses to believe or understand why they lost. I would say these sorts of individuals will finally learn something, but they don't really ever learn. They're just NPCs who are incapable of common sense at this point. So let's keep winning, everyone. Thank you for watching. Subscribe, have a wonderful day, and I'll see you in the next one.
Yeah, let's make games great again, right? It looks like we're making some progress, so that's good. All right, well, that was a good video. Thank you for joining me today. If you like my reactions, consider subscribing. You could like, you can hit that bell, you could share. That'd be great. And I would also love to hear from you in the comments down below. All right, well, until the next video, You have a great day. Stay safe, and we'll see you later. All right. Bye.
I got nightmares in my head, I fear that the thoughts build up until I can't hear.